Sir, thanks for joining us today on Leadership Log, which is a podcast for the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center community on topics of interest. And the topic of interest today is learning more about non-program of record cases in the Air Force Security Assistance and Cooperation Directorate. So, sir, if you could introduce yourself to the audience and give us a little of your career background.
Sure. Well, good afternoon. Thanks first for having me today. I'm Colonel James Becker. I'm a career acquisitions officer. I've been serving for about 23 years. A few different career fields, actually. The first as a developmental engineer, working electronic warfare and space programs, some aircraft platforms as well. Transitioned to work or to be a financial manager, where I was a base comptroller for a couple of years. And then transitioned into program management, which I've done for about the last 12 years, and have worked a number of aircraft programs, did some test work. And then the last 8 specifically, I've been in security assistance and cooperation, working for military sales, worked on the program office side, working a major platform for one of our international partners. And then the last 2 years here at the Air Force Security Assistance and Cooperation Directorate here at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Okay. So before we get into kind of the topic at hand, help us understand what is the basic level of service that, or the basic services that AFSAC provides to international partners in foreign military sales?
Sure, absolutely. AFSAC has an extremely, I think, exciting mission for what we do in terms of advancing security assistance and cooperation for international partners, directly tied to the National Defense Strategy in terms of strengthening our alliances, attracting new partners, definitely aligns with our Air Force priorities. But specifically, AFSAC really, at the end of the day, is really responsible for being that cog for Air Force programs to establish that government-to-government agreement with the international partner on specifically what we're going to sell them, all the terms and conditions that go along with it, and then getting to the point where we actually sign on the dotted line to establish that agreement between our two countries. And then once we do that, we typically pass those programs over to the program offices who execute them, actually, procuring the goods and services. And then AFSAC throughout that process continues to maintain the program from a financial contracting kind of perspective. And then we also provide long-term sustainment for those platforms through their end of life as we continue to update the case with the partner, even to the point where they send in requisitions for parts, and we manage that through our program with our logisticians to actually deliver that service and those parts to the partner.
Mm-hmm. And now countries have an option to not go through AFSAC on some sales. They could do like a direct commercial sales, correct? But I mean, countries recognize that there's value in using AFSAC because of the expertise that you guys provide.
Absolutely, and as you said, direct commercial sales is an option. The U.S. government typically does not portray a preference to the partner on what they would like to utilize. But from my perspective, and I think the enterprise perspective, there are benefits. Obviously, you get all the support and the total package approach that we typically sell with a platform. You're not just getting, an aircraft that comes and lands on your ramp. You're also getting all the services and whether that be construction, whether that be the technical data, support equipment, all the way down to the training and long-term sustainment of that platform. So definitely a benefit. And then obviously from just the U.S., our technological advantage, countries can typically see that's an advantage to them to have that guarantee of what we're able to provide from our portfolio.
Mm-hmm. And so help us understand now the difference between a program of record and a non-program of record.
Sure. So a program of record, I guess in the USAF, U.S. Air Force sense, is really a program that's gone through through a formal initiation, milestone B, typically in the acquisition process sense, and then that's funded throughout the program's cycle in the future years. From a AFSAC perspective or foreign military sales perspective, a non-program of record is typically a program that you would no longer, it's something that we would sell that you would no longer find in the U.S. inventory. Maybe we used to fly it, but we no longer do. It may be a very heavily modified variant of an existing USAP platform where we've changed a number of things for various reasons in that platform, or the partner has specific requirements that they want changed. Or it may be a system that we've never had in our inventory. And a great example of that, which we find in a lot of our, I would say, partners that maybe don't quite have the financial means, is really look at what we call commercial derivative aircraft, where you're taking for example, a propeller, driven a Cessna type aircraft or a small business jet, and you're packing it full of, sensors, even up to the capability to be able to drop a weapon. Which ultimately at the end of the day results in a lower cost per hour flying platform for them. That may be what they're really looking for is a basic counterterrorism platform, and these things provide great capability for them at a much lower cost. So, but at the for those type of platforms, we do not fly them. We typically don't have that experience with them, and that's why we call them non-programs of record.
And so now, we've got some situations where these non-program of records countries are still coming to AFSAC because they still want the expertise that you guys offer, but that offers some additional hurdles for your organization, correct?
Absolutely, and it's really for our office as well as the program offices. I would say probably more specifically for the program offices. That when we talk program of record and you think about what we're selling, the Foreign Military Sales Act of 1968, when FMS was established, really the intent was to sell goods or services from U.S. stock, to provide exactly what we have. That's changed a lot over the last decades, and I would say specifically probably within the last 20 years, that has really exploded from the perspective of countries wanting to come in with their own requirements. Them wanting to, they have specific capability gaps that maybe the platform that we fly doesn't quite need it or meet it, but may provide with some, modification a way for them to meet the requirements. And then they have specific things that they're looking for. They may, want to put a new sensor on an aircraft that we've got. They may have a specific indigenous weapon that they utilize, or they may have procured from another country. That they want to integrate on the platform. So a lot of different reasons why they come do it, but definitely a benefit to them from that perspective.
Mm-hmm. And again, help us understand then what challenges does that offer to AFSAC then? Sure.
So when you look at a program of record that has all these new requirements, there's a lot of things that come into that in the beginning, especially. A normal program of record or something that we would sell, kind of off the shelf for a FMS program, there's not going to be much development work. It's going to be pretty straightforward. The program office is probably contracted for that specific item before. They're going to know the cost, the pricing. They're going to have an idea of how to sustain it, even down to what we deal with now in terms of airworthiness certifications to make sure that that platform is safe and available to fly. So. When we start moving into these non-program of records, that's where we start kind of losing some of that knowledge, if you will, in terms of what do we do with that platform from the perspective of we may not fully understand the requirements or how the system operates. So the program office and AFSAC has to go and start digging in. Potentially you're going to see more requests from industry for information. Those type of things. As I mentioned, you're going to start looking at kind of that engineering and airworthiness piece from the beginning, specifically for those platforms, as I mentioned, like commercial derivative aircraft, where we may have never flown or seen even a variant of that platform before. That country may want to put a sensor on an existing platform that, when you look at the way a program office is structured, they may have engineers that are used to the normal program and a specific type of sensor or the way the avionics work. But once you significantly change and modify that, then you're starting to potentially need different expertise in that program office that maybe you can source internally and maybe you can't. And so that's one of the biggest challenges. And so we always, this really is probably the crux of when you look at the challenge of non-program of record is our manpower resources that we need to do these activities really keeping pace with the sales that we're seeing in non-program of record. And there are a myriad of other issues that come to play with that. when you look at even just our disclosure and releasability process, we have a very prescribed process of how we sell foreign military articles to countries. They have to be approved. The type of information they received have to be approved, the actual article itself. And we may not even have a security classification guide that covers what we can talk to the partner about, whether they can have certain items of information about that asset. So that's again a manpower, a resource-intensive manpower effort to go do some of these things, and so it does take some additional expertise to do that. You also have, for example, even outside of the case development process, you have you have execution issues or challenges that you run into with non-program of record. Most, if you're going to get an item off the shelf, it's going to have gone through all the certification testing. It's going to have gone through a development program already. If it's a major, aircraft platform, you're going to have done all the flight testing that you need to do, whether that be testing, to have a new weapon on the aircraft, or you're going to change something in the avionics. But with the non-program of record, you may have to go through a full development effort again that you may have done previously, but now you've changed so much. Again, a benefit of non-program of record is we can go back and look at history and say, with different sustainment challenges that we've had or different structural challenges that we've had on a platform, the partner can request, hey, I know this aircraft, it can only has a service life of 8,000 hours. Based on what you've learned, can you increase the service life of this platform? And so the contractor may be willing to go do the analysis and change structure, change components to actually increase the service life. That is great for the partner. That's great for the way they maintain and sustain that platform. But it poses obviously challenges when you're now talking about a platform that hasn't gone or hasn't tested certain elements of that platform in its design. And it may not only impact, the flying characteristics, it may impact the way a weapon comes off the aircraft, the way the air crews or the maintainers maintain the aircraft, a lot of different elements that could impact. And then talking about sustainment, this is another huge challenge and a thing that we've found difficulty in really tackling is how do you deal with the long-term sustainment of a non-program of record? A normal program of record that's been in our inventory, you've got typically a pretty robust sustainment and logistics tail to that. You've got vendors that have been doing this for a long time. You've got you have DLA, the Defense Logistics Agency, and a lot of other different ways to manage and maintain or sustain the platform. When you start talking about a non-program of record, it may be one country that is buying a platform, and they're the only ones that fly it. And so now you've developed a situation where you may have unique support equipment. You've got unique technical data. The spares are what we call one-offs, where no one else has them. And so now you've really reduced the availability or the base that can actually produce parts for that platform. And that may, that company that sold the platform may be willing to do that for a number of years, but at some point they're going to make a business case decision that says maybe it's not worth doing that anymore. And then where do you go? Because no one else has commonality with the system. So definitely a challenge and something that we are taking a look at to see how we can improve that longevity for sustainment first for international partners.
And I know one of the other challenges that FMS sales have to be at no cost to the U.S. government. So all of the manpower and the requirements and things like that, they all have to be sourced back through the country of record, correct?
Absolutely, and again, that's a great point and a challenge that we also deal with in terms of cost to the partner. But that's something that we identify up front. We go through a very rigorous pricing and analysis of what we're selling the partner. We give them that information up front so they understand that says if you want to go heavily modify a system or fly a system that we've never flown, there are significant development costs to doing that, significant testing costs to doing that. And so we provide that to them up front so they hopefully have a good understanding of what that costs and what that may mean to them. Many are willing to do that because they have unique and specific requirements. But at the end of the day, some are recognized, well, maybe that's, we bit off a little bit more than we can chew, and may change some of the requirements to tailor some of that back. But definitely a consideration they have to think about when it comes to wanting a non-program of record.
So what do you see is like driving the kind of desire for these non-program of records, or the increase in them?
I think a lot of what it is I think a lot of countries are becoming more mature in the way they assess their own capabilities and their capability gaps. Obviously, they deal with a unique and different set of mission requirements that we have. They're flying in different areas. If it's for the defense of their own country, a different dynamic in terms of whether it be terrain, whether it be the enemy they may have to engage. And so they have their own requirements of what that looks like for them. Some of it, I think, is the advancements in technology. We may have a system that was designed in the 60s or 70s that we're currently still flying. Just by virtue of technology and the potentially the funding to go do it, they want to incorporate advanced sensors that they have, or even indigenous systems. They may have a specific, maybe within their country, they developed a electronic warfare system or a specific munition. I think there's actually even probably some national pride in having your own components on an airplane that's different and unique from what the U.S. Air Force would fly.
So, sir, how does your organization, specifically your group, support these requests?
Sure. So we, in the normal process, I mean, I would say the process is all not that different for a program of record versus a non-program of record from a normal establishing that government-to-government agreement, other than the things you mentioned or we discussed about, whether it be cost, whether it be the additional certifications and waivers you may have to go get. But what we're really focused on is figuring out or helping the program offices resource and be able to get that manpower that they need due to the additional requirements that these programs bring. So I think there's a few ways that we're trying to do that. The first one is really determining a formal way to track these programs. It's kind of silly if you think about it, but we do not right now have the ability from a DoD level or an enterprise level to be able to track and tell you specifically, I have this many non-program of record programs in my portfolio. We do, we have over 3,000 programs in our portfolio, 3,000 cases. We sample, we look at the requirements, see what we have. But when it comes to going and answering those specific data calls, we don't have a mechanism that tracks that. So one of the things that we've been working with our headquarters on is to actually implement a change to our case development system that would allow for incorporation of that data to specifically track not only just the fact that it is a non-program of record, but what type is it? We delineate them by 6 types, anything from a minor modification of a platform all the way up to a full-blown developmental platform that we've never flown before or seen before. So in that way, we're looking to better be able to answer data calls that come from the Office of Management Budget. And that way, when they actually disperse our administrative funding that comes to us to help develop some of these cases and execute the cases in the program offices, they hopefully will have additional manpower to do that, in addition to the funding that the partner pays for that specific case. I'd say the second way we're trying to do it is really still on that kind of resourcing front. Is we have our own budgeting process, if you will. We call it the Security Assistance Program and Budget Review, the SABR process, as well as a unfunded requirement or unfunded request process that we have throughout the year. Those are well-established process in the security assistance realm, but they've never really incorporated those specific needs for non-program of record. So what we're trying to do is to ensure that we can fully justify that we've described specifically why these programs are different, why they require additional manpower to go either develop that government-to-government agreement or to actually go execute the case itself, and actually formalize that process through our headquarters to work on getting additional resources specifically for the non-program of record challenge. And then lastly, one of the things that we're actively working on with the program offices is we understand that SABR and UFR process, the unfunded process that I mentioned, is well established, but it's not exactly the most flexible. When we have something that comes in short notice, or we know it's an urgent need, we sometimes don't have the ability to quickly react to it and meet our partners' requirements and needs. So what we're trying to do is figure out a rapid, flexible way to address those partner requirements, to establish a process at the Defense Security Cooperation Agency, DSCA, our headquarters, to hopefully set aside some of reserve money for these specific projects, and then essentially a process to put a process in place to adjudicate those. We don't want this to be something that just takes the place of the SABR or the UFR process, but something that can really augment it to provide those targeted dollars where they're needed to meet partner requirements. In many cases, it's really about, as we talked about the National Defense Strategy, part of that is trying to do that with speed and discipline, and being able to do this quickly and meet partner needs sometimes is really important to that partner, and being able to quickly respond to those is important. So that's the project that we're working on right now with our headquarters, to try to get this available to the program offices in a way for them to better execute their programs.
So sir, that just about brings us to the end of our time. But before we close, I want to see, is there anything that we've left out or anything that you'd like to add?
No, I think I just thanks for your time. Hopefully this has shed a little light on non-program of record, and at the end of the day, we're happy to have countries request non-program of records. There is obviously a challenge to them in terms of, as I mentioned, the way we develop the cases, the way we execute them, the manpower requirements for them, and long-term how we sustain them. But having that flexibility within the foreign military sales process, where a country can get their specific needs met, whether that's, as we mentioned, for specific combat requirements, whether it's even just an issue of national pride, I think is a great benefit to our relationship with our partners, and better serves their needs.
And ultimately leads to enhanced capability for the Air Force through our interoperability with other nations.
Absolutely, excellent point, and that is something that we have to keep looking at going forward, because of the type of operations that we do around the world. Those coalition involvements are essential, and interoperability is a key piece, not only from just being able to operate while we fight, but even being potentially at the same base and being able to share a spare part because it's common. Those type of things is huge, and just being able to train and operate the same way is essential. So great point.
All right, sir. Thanks again for joining us on Leadership Log and helping us understand these challenges.
Great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate your time.